This is a short bite episode of Homeschool Together. Hello and welcome to Homeschool Together Short Bite Edition. If you have a chance, head down into the show notes to see how you can support the podcast. Today we are talking about the game. We know some of you out there are knitters, and some of you are crocheters, and some of you are quilters. And some of those quilters out there have a love affair with a classic 80s game, Tetris. We have the board game for you. Quilters meet Tetris in the game of Patchwork. We got this just recently. This was one of your, oh, hey, sweetie, games are coming. Don't be angry with me.
Well, yeah, when I buy things on Game Nerds and I wait until I have enough to get free shipping and then they all ship. And I go, hey, don't be mad. I bought this like 4 months ago.
Yes.
So I bought a copy of Patchwork, and you will see there are several different kinds of Patchwork. There's the regular version. There's a Scandinavian type version. Mm-hmm. We have the Americana edition. It doesn't really matter. It's just artwork. But in basic, what you do is you have a board.
It's like a quilting themed, right?
Yeah, it's quilting themed. And you basically have limited time to complete your board with a bunch of Tetris pieces. Mm-hmm. This is in basic. But what I think is really neat about this game is in the center of the game is a time track. Mm-hmm. And you move your pawns along this track. And when you get to the very end, however much of your board you have done is how much you score. So
it has the same complexity of building out a kind of a square pattern as say like a king domino or a queen domino type of games, things of that nature.
Similar, yeah. If you like those kind of games that do some drafting, and so this is a tile drafting game. One of the neat things is all the pieces are arranged in a circle around that time board in the center, and there's a little.
A little meeple? Yeah,
kind of a meeple thing that sits there. And what you're allowed to do is on your turn, you are allowed to buy one of the next 3 patches. And you can't buy beyond that. You can only buy one of the next 3. Mm-hmm. And whichever one you buy, you'll then move the marker to that point, and then the next person can buy one of the next 3 in front of them.
Yeah. So as you're going around that center circle,
you can kind of see what's coming ahead, but you don't know exactly because you're not sure where your opponents, what they're going to purchase. Mm-hmm. And the way that you purchase is you purchase with buttons. So you have a certain amount of little cardboard buttons at the beginning of the game.
And they have numbers on them for like money. There's like a 5 and a 10 button tiles.
They're basically the currency of the game. So you have these buttons, and then as you go along the time track, you will cross button spaces, and when you cross that, you will earn however many buttons are on your quilt.
It's kind of like pass and go, and you get $200 type of
kind
thing.
of, yeah. So when you're buying these different pieces, you're basically, some of them have some buttons on them, and some of them don't, and they're all different shapes. And when you buy them, you have to put them in your quilt right away. So you're kind of playing this game between like managing your buttons and putting these pieces in.
And the pieces can be very complex. And
some of them are very more complex than Tetris.
You really have to think about the geometry of how you're assembling and look ahead on like what type of pieces are left on the board.
And what you can afford.
Yeah, and what you can fit into those spaces. You kind of want to build out instead of, there's different ways you can play the game.
There's a bunch of different ways. One of the ways you can score points is by being the first to complete a 7x7 grid that's all solid. There are a couple of single one tiles that are on the time track. And if whoever's the first person to cross that space gets those single tiles and can place them. The other thing that's really interesting about it is that it doesn't observe the normal turn order of you go, I go, you go, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
Instead,
and this is a 2-player game.
This is only 2-player. Instead, whoever is behind will keeps going until they're no longer behind.
Yeah.
On the time track.
I like that. We've seen that in some other games like Quacks of Quedlinburg and stuff where if you're falling behind, they help boost you back up.
It's a mechanism, yeah. And what's interesting is when you buy your tile, your patch, however much you purchase it for, that's how many spaces you're going to end up going on your time track. So you could say, oh, I'm behind. I'm behind, let's say 5 spaces. I could buy like a 2. I could buy a 3, and I could stay behind you. And so you have that kind of dynamic where you keep playing if you're behind. One of the things that's interesting too when you're behind is that you can choose to leap in front of the other player and collect the number of buttons corresponding to the number of spaces that you win.
So if you need money.
You could end up leapfrogging that player, and that's how you spend your turn, basically, by leapfrogging them and getting some buttons for it. And I have had to do that many a time. Yeah. So there's this management of like, what patch am I going to buy? Where am I going to put it? And how's my money? How are my resources going? And how are those looking in the future? Really interesting and dynamic game. And I love that it's just 2-player. There's so many games that aren't optimized for 2, and this one is only 2-player, and it is really optimized for that. And our daughter really loves this one.
Yes, she does.
And at 7, she can totally play it. And she does pretty
does
well
pretty
at
gosh
it.
darn
I mean,
well, yeah.
I considering the difficulty of the strategy, I think this is a great for spatial awareness, really good for strategic planning ahead,
resource management
of your money. So lots of good counting and things. We even played this one time where our younger daughter played with you on your team, and she helped with the counting and things. So I think there's some good things there too.
Something I like about these type of games also that have milestones and triggers that things occur that a lot of times as the adult when you're playing with the kid is that you have to manage all of that while you're also playing the game. What's cool about this is that she's starting to get to the age where she goes, "Oh, Daddy, you passed the button. Make sure you get your money." And it's like she's smarter. She's aware enough to know the rules of the game that in case you don't have to play 100%. Aware of the entire game. You can actually enjoy the game, and if you forget something, she's able to now start to remind you about that, right?
Yeah.
Don't forget this, don't forget that, because for so long you have to manage her playing the game as well, right? And it's now starting to be a lot of fun that she's these type of games where there's like, I like how she crossed the buttons, there's that extra space thing, moving the meeple. You don't have to I feel like now we're not having to manage her as much. Once you explain the game, she plays maybe one game of it, she knows how to play it, and then you can play it again. I love these games that have these type of milestone actions that happen. It's a nice learning experience for her to, remind other people to play and stuff.
Yeah, becoming more of a full player and not needing to be coached.
But what's cool too is that I've seen her now try to explain the game. Like we were with my mother this weekend, and she was telling her about the game, and she's like, "Oh yeah, you have to pick the pieces, you have to manage your buttons, you have to get resources." Like she was explaining it like somebody who knows how to play games and stuff. So I think she's becoming more and more aware of rules and
so I think this game says technically 8+, but our 7-year-old's playing it just fine.
It's not that complex.
I don't think that I would go much younger than her, or they wouldn't understand the strategy. But if you've got a game playing 7-year-old, I think you'd be fine.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, 8 sounds about right. But this is a really great game. So Patchwork from Mayfair Games. I think this is one of my favorite 2-player games.
It's also
just
very,
2-player.
very beautiful. Well done. Well designed.
Oh, absolutely.
The whole quilting thing, once you finally, start to build out your quilt, it's actually very beautiful. It's actually well done.
Yeah, I think it's a really great game. So if you see it, any of the editions, definitely pick it up, and you can check it out down in the show notes. Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time,
happy homeschooling!